your biggest breakthrough?
Look, opening last summer was like one of the best feelings of my life. Earning revenue feels really, really good.
Really good.
You know, when you build something and somebody pay you for it, like that's insane.
Yeah.
And so the one of the biggest breakthroughs on the journey so far is getting the more open, getting it operating, and having positive customer experiences and great customer feedback. That's sort of the theme of breakthroughs. But you wanted to talk about stress and anxiety.
How are you taking care of yourself on this journey?
Bro, I never told Sebastian this. I never told him this. Here's a black guy that gets to be his authentic self 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized in that moment that for the past 3-4 years, however long I've been working, I was not being my authentic self. If I had the urge to say the N-word, I couldn't really say nigga. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't like that. Like, I kind of want to say what I want to say when I want to say it.
Yeah.
So once it dawned on me that here was a guy that was his authentic self, hoop shorts to work, you know what I'm saying? Do-rag. And once I realized that there's an authentic black guy being himself, and oh, by the way, he makes about $120 a year. Let's be honest about what y'all make, Sebastian.
Right.
It's bad. It's bad.
You and Gabby are doing really well, I must say. What?
He works for the IRS now.
Right. There's no paper trail on that money. But once I realized that he's been an authentic self and he makes the same amount of money I was making working for those people I worked for, that was like, yo, come on, I got to go bet on myself. So I want anybody of color that is like listening to this to you go towards the path of authenticity. Like, do what feels like it's authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy gets to be, I'm in his office all the time. He's not in there with a suit on, like being weird.
I never wear suits. So I have like an executive team, and like obviously, as you'd imagine, my executive team in many cases like twice my age, right? They got families, they got long, life of experiences, and so my CTO, his name is Neil. And he built he was one of the guys behind Headspace, which is a meditation app. They're doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. He's like one of their key guys, led their entire engineering and product org, and I'm lucky enough to like have him on our team. Yeah. But we go to these meetings in San Francisco. Now he flew out of Burbank, I flew out of LAX, and when I get there, like we land at the same airport. And I'm wearing it's some big meetings. This is like meetings with like David Drummond, who runs Alphabet, which is like he runs all of Google, a black dude. Original all of these DC. Other we're going to Goldman Sachs, like all of these massive meetings and meeting like the heads of these groups. Yeah. So he comes out, and my CFO meets us there too, Gabi, and like these guys are like mad professional, like suit. I mean they didn't have they weren't like full suit, but they were like jacket buttoned all the way up, you think they were going for an interview. And I come off, I got the hood on with a baseball cap, like jeans, sneakers, Jordans. Yeah. I'm like, I think it was Yeezys, but either way, initially they were like, yo, what are you doing, But then we got into these rooms and they see the respect that people give me for being my authentic self, but also as Marcus, mentioned earlier, even being credible, right? Having something to say and that people want to hear, right?
That's a form of self-care. So when you ask about self-care, feeling like you're being authentic feels really good.
No, it does. I used to early on, when I first wanted to break into tech, I used to see all of the black people who were in. They used to dress a certain way. They used to be thoughtful about what they posted online. They used to try to make sure they managed their circle well, or they wasn't too public about their life. Even from the things you like, right, that show up online. You don't want other people to see it. And then at one point I was just like, man, fuck that. I literally just stopped caring. And now I do whatever I want. And it's healthy. Self-care is one of the most important things. So there's this, and I think people just assume it means doing stuff for yourself, but it means actually doing what makes you happy. Even if that means not talking to someone or sitting in a dark room, if that's what makes you watching TV all day, if that makes you happy and it relieves stress for you, you should do it and you should prioritize that. Yep. And the biggest part of prioritizing it, or I guess the thing that allows you to prioritize it consistently, is by putting it on schedule. And so Marcus has a workout regimen that he stays very true to no matter what, and that's a part of it. I have one of my mentors, I would say, is this guy named Mike Jones, who's the CEO of Science, one of Peter's partners, and I'm so inspired by his discipline, specifically as it relates to his family. Like being with his family is his self-care, right? And every day he comes in the office at 9 o'clock and he leaves by 5. Like with the intent that he wants to get home to eat dinner with his kids, like tuck them in, spend time with his wife, like every single day. I don't care if Bill Gates himself calls him and says, I want to spend time with you. As long as it's between 9 and 5, he'll do it. If it's after 5, he will not do it. He does not care who it is, what it is, how much money is on the line. Like 5 o'clock, he's on his way back to Malibu to spend time with his family. And I just admire that. Like I hope to, when I have a family, have that sort of discipline because, oftentimes we get so busy, working, chasing after whatever, target is in front of us that we deprioritize all of the things that matter in life. And like I've looked at him, even obviously like from afar, but now even up close, and just like understanding his motivations, but then obviously how he's built this schedule of discipline, and then how he's applied that to his everyday life is just so inspiring. I think that to that end, self-care is really important, and I think people should certainly take it more serious. And it just really means like whatever relieves stress, makes your life easier and you enjoy, you should do it. And I think the other side of that too is like to make sure like the people around you are doing that. Like Marcus is always on me about like, yo, working out, eating healthy. Like I don't care what it is. Like he even if I'm tired of hearing it, he won't let it go. And I have a really good group of friends in general who like always do that, and we always check up on each other, and we fellowship. We get together, obviously like digitally, consistently every single day through like group chats, but we'll also get together in person and we'll just like kick it with each other. And we don't ask about like girls or like stuff like that, but like what's going on in life and like how can I help you, and like we and as a party even asking how can you help someone, like you actually have to follow up on it, and that's super important too, just follow through. But when your friends like physical and mental health is on the line, like you should certainly take it serious, and we do, and I think that's a good practice in our relationship. As a kid, like my mom has like these old like videos and footage of like people would ask me like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd be like a billionaire. Like that's it. Done. Like start in right there. Like, and I'd be like, I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but like that's the goal, you know. And so not many people can think like that. So it's difficult to mentor someone or take someone under your wing when their aspirations are at large and you can't see that far. So I think for sure, super lucky to have a guy like Peter who's like seen the mountaintop and say, hey, yo, I'm gonna bet on this kid. And obviously he's gonna give like I'm returning value to him, but in general, like he didn't have to do that. There was a ton of people there he could have chosen for that. But it also is like vice versa too. Like we get to live when you're really talented. Like it's not just about people betting on you, but you also betting on that person. You know, like I also opted into that relationship with Peter. I could have gone and done a bunch of other routes to get this off the ground. Maybe it would have been slower. Maybe it wouldn't have been as successful. But like either way, I put the work in. I made all of the sacrifices, and like I'm the reason like we're here today. Like
it's fascinating to me how much of a motivator being without when you grow up, how much of a motivator that can be, how well that does for so many of us to just want more. You heard him say, I want to be a billionaire. Like that comes from a little bit of like watching TV. Like VH1 had a show called The Lifestyle of Rich and Famous.
Yo,
like,
fam, I used to watch that
I used to watch the shit too. You know what I'm saying?
Fabulous Life.
There's a bit of that that's like, you see some nice car and you want it. But then there's another side of it, frankly, that's the real motivation, which is seeing anyone you love not being able to do what they may want to do, what their heart's desire is. I grabbed my piggy bank at the age of 5 or 6 or 7 and put it into my granny's purse without her knowing, because I was under the impression that she was struggling with rent that month. I was just under the impression that it was a tough day. I said, man, maybe the piggy bank will help. That little $2.75, that $2.75 that was in there. Let me give it to Granny. So that motivator, and so there are a lot of young boys like ourselves, not too far away from where we currently sit, that are looking for motivators. And they might be without, and I want them to know that they have everything that they need in terms of motivation right there. that alone will push you to align yourself with certain people that you should get advice from and take certain jobs and be friends with different people, and then before you know it, you got an office off the ocean in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and you grow out of people too. I think that's the one thing that people don't really recognize. And this is like, it's sort of the concept of like what Peter Thiel wrote about. And I don't endorse Peter Thiel, like certainly not his personal standpoints on anything, but as like he's certainly a genius when it comes to business. And he has this, he wrote this book called 0 to 1. And it's sort of the concept of like taking something that's like just an idea, like even just like in your head, never even written down, to like built in this sort of groundbreaking, very innovative, cultural, even, shifting company, right? Like something that completely is like innovative in its pure sense. Yeah. But like that also can be applied to people or like steps in life. It's like not everyone can go with you from 0 to 1. And one of the toughest challenges that I see a lot of my friends even today sort of fall victim to is they're trying to keep the same crew to get to the same, like get to a new place. Like sometimes, man, people will drag you down. It's just like it's energy, or it's like they're not developing their skill as much as you are. We're so afraid to break out of that. It's just important. It's just like, look, it's even as simple as I was telling a friend, she's an actress, and she was like, she's having all of these issues with like either like her publicist or even like her accountant. I'm like, look, man, like, well, when you were small, they were perfect for you because their experience has been to manage people with that sort of wealth or of that sort of fame. And now that you're not, like you got to go get people who are, right? Like you have to grow out of relationships, and it's not like a negative. Some people will scale, or even Jay and Dame are good examples of that. Like Jay was like, look, like at the time his relationship with Dame made sense. But then at another point, Dame wasn't growing in the same way Jay was. And it was like, people make it seem like a beat, but it was just like Jay wanted to evolve. You know, and so he surrounded himself with people who could help him evolve. And he continued to, he's been one of the only people, and I don't know if he talks about it in the same frame as me with like 0 to 1, but if you go back and look at his career from like, even at like musically, but then also certainly business-wise, he's been one of the only people to grow out of relationships. He started with Jazzo, grow out of that relationship. Dame, grow out of that relationship. John Minnelli, grow out of that relationship. But it's not because he dislikes those people. It's just because he is constantly evolving, and those people aren't. And like you have to take that playbook serious and apply that to personal and professional life.
What's been the biggest failure thus far? We talk a lot about success, and everybody has definitions of success. I think we need to kind of dismantle the fear of failure to like take more shots. Because I think with more shots comes more wins.
It's true.
So what's been the biggest failure? Because obviously y'all motherfuckers are successful now, so y'all made it through that failure. What did that look like?
Tough.
That's deep.
That's tough.
Failures every daily failures.
Yeah, daily things that make me feel low. Very regular. Look, I had a lot of entrepreneurship misalignment in my life.
What does that mean?
Entrepreneurship misalignment, I just worked on things that ultimately weren't aligned in my life. I've worked with friends on business ideas and that ultimately didn't materialize. And, fraternity brothers and things like that, where like the friendship gets strained because we weren't aligned going in. We were just kind of, trying to do something. Yeah. You rely on your close relationships, and sometimes that isn't the best scenario. Sometimes it's business and sometimes it's friendship. But when it starts as friendship and then you want to make it one or the other,
it ruins the other.
And I don't want to be that negative. Sometimes it works. It's different strokes, different folks in general. But it's incredibly difficult to transition it to be serious business and then playful friendship. So the biggest failure that I've experienced over sort of my journey in adulthood to date is walking into those, sort of misalignments with friends, and then ultimately damaging not only some business idea, but then also damaging a friendship. Be very careful about who you decide to do things with, and and preserve friendship where friendship is most important. Preserve it at all costs. Yeah.
That's a good point. I had a lot of thoughts on that too. But to expand on like what he said was his greatest failure, it's very similar to mine, but there's like more of a tangible like story from that. So before I started like PlayVS as it is today, I tried to do like I was always like so I worked at Rocket Fiber, left Rocket Fiber, built this esports team, sold the esports team, and then I was like tinkering with all of these ideas within the space, specifically focused and centered around esports. And there were a few that like we thought about, we did a lot of work on, didn't materialize. Some by myself, some with people. And then there was one that started to get more traction, and it was a wagering platform. So we're trying to build a betting platform where people could, play, against a friend or a team for money, right? Like that they put up on their own.
Yep.
And we built this really beautiful product. Ultimately, didn't have publisher support. I recruited a friend that worked with me at Rocket Fiber, a bunch of other friends to like join me on this journey. And there's like a bunch of lessons that I learned from that. Right, because like ultimately, like we were able to build something really cool, but ultimately like it didn't work. One, like we didn't have strategy. Like we were so focused on the product that we forgot about the operations of the business. It's like if you were building out a space, but then you forgot along the way what the hell was supposed to be in it. It's like you can't build like that. Business doesn't work. There's no sustainment in that. The other thing is like to what Marcus said is like the first few people that I work with were like friends. And so, we weren't aligned with our vision. So like, we started off like, hey man, we're really excited about this, very enthusiastic. We want to do this. We're going to all quit our jobs and do this. But then you find like, one guy gets into a relationship and is more concerned about gardening at his house than like actually building the business, or another guy, has whatever issues, and now he's like halfway in the business, halfway out the business, and like all of these sort of things. And so like all of us now have different desires and different motivators, and so we're not all driven by like this idea that we sort of all came together to get off the ground. And like that process was just horrible, right? Because it was like we were pumping money into this thing, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we know we were building something like the market needed, but we weren't thinking about it from not only like a strategic POV, but also like we weren't thinking about it in terms of like how to actually build this into a company, because it was just too personal, and like no one was really focused, and so eventually like sort of the dust settled on that, and I took all of those lessons. There were so many more of them, right? Like everything from networking to like whom I aligned myself with, how I thought about business. I took all of those lessons and I sort of applied it to this version of PlayVS, right? And so like one of them is I hire the best person, like no matter what. Like I don't care if it costs me a premium. I go out, if I have a role, I get the best person. And that oftentimes starts by me and our recruiting team building out spreadsheets of like people. So we'll say, here's 200 companies who we believe have the best product managers. We'll list out, and then every person at that company in a product manager or equivalent role, and then we'll put them in this spreadsheet. And then the ones that we really like, based on their backgrounds, we'll put an asterisk, and then we'll back channel. We'll find out about their experiences, right? People, without talking to them, people who've talked to them, find out if they're good or not. And then we'll stack rank them, right? 1 through whatever number. And then we go and get number 1. Like by all, like every single time we've done that, which is like every time we've kind of, hired someone at our company past 15 people, we've gone out and hired number 1 on that list. And to me, that's really important for a few reasons. Like one, I'm a first-time CEO, and the people that I hire are really ultimately like responsible for driving the vision that I have. And so hiring people who are really good at something, at like whatever it is that they do, is probably the fastest and best way to learn, right? And also hiring people who can work anywhere is super important, because that will keep them motivated, right? It's like if they've decided to not work at Spotify, where they'll get this cushy salary and come join the startup, where even though we're like well funded, they'll take less money and it's more risky, then like they're motivated to like come in and make sure this shit doesn't fall apart every day. The second thing is when you, like I learned, like before I used to try to control so much of the process. And that's like, we fall victim to that. Like when, it's like when you have a new toy, And you'd be like, yo, man's be like, it's your brother even. You'd be like, yo, let me see that toy. You'd be like, yo, hold up, fam. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can see it right here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't even want them to touch it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it is. Like, when you get an idea, we so protective of our ideas that we don't share them with one another to continue to improve them. Some of that is like insecurities, but a lot of that is like also like just protectiveness. Or like, and so like when we start working on projects, like, you know, you got other people involved, like you're micromanaging everybody, making sure everybody's doing everything, and also the way that you envision it. And what I've learned, like from doing that, which I did in that first sort of time around, is that you can only have vision around the outcome, and you can't envision how it's going to come together. And so you got to hire really smart people and then get out of the way.
Yeah.
You got to just let them run, right? Because you don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. You hire smart people to learn from them. And so many times people become like the CEO of some company, or they found something that they sort of start drinking the Kool-Aid and start thinking that, like, you know, because it's their thing, they're the smartest person in the room, and the company ends up falling like victim to failure because of that. So, you know, I think one of the things that I think people also give me a lot of credit for within our company is like hiring really smart people, but then getting out of their way and giving them autonomy to do their job. And those are like two lessons that I learned that I felt that before.
Last question, what are y'all most proud of?
Man, most proud so far of keeping my head on straight, you know what I'm saying, in the middle of the journey, not giving up. You know, one of my favorite Jay-Z quotes of many is, you know, the best thing we ever did was we didn't give up. And so, yeah, I am most proud that I have not given up, continue to work for myself, and try to make this thing exactly what we know it can be. And by virtue of not giving up, I haven't lost love, right? I haven't lost friendship. I haven't lost family relationships. And I've spent adequate time around love over the past 3 years as a result of not giving up, because I know that when I worked full time and things were a little different, those things weren't true. So I'm incredibly proud of not giving up and continuing to be surrounded by love in the midst of that.
Fire.
Yeah, that's beautiful. No, so obviously agree with that, and you know, similar to him, I want like that same sort of sentiment around not giving up. I love the Jay-Z line, "Far from a Harvard student, just had the balls to do it." And so I certainly embody that as well. Look, I think, you know, to not have the same answer as him is something I'm also equally proud of. It's just like what we built, right? And that means from the space that we built, I love getting off the elevator, turning to the left and seeing this massive orange and white PlayVS sign, and walking into the lobby of our office and not see a receptionist, but instead an arcade, right? Because we're a video game company, and you know, turning the hall and seeing all of these desks in this very expansive space, but like every single seat is filled, you know, like you know, it's like, how can you not be proud of that, you know? And also like to that end, outside of external of the office, it's like the people that we touch, you know, all of these kids. Like we had a kid who has no arms who plays this video game with his feet, and he plays next to a star baseball player. And like he's never been involved in anything. Like his school doesn't really have a lot of adaptive sports, and so you know, he's never been able to find community. And like through PlayVS, he's found community, and now he has friends that he never crossed paths with otherwise. Or we just had this mom, in fact, named Kelly. I'll have to show you a picture afterwards, but this was last week, or maybe the week before. They're in Massachusetts. I forget her son's name, and I forget the school he goes to, but I remember her name is Kelly. She flew from Massachusetts with her son to like come to our office to like just to meet me. And I was like this lady from Massachusetts to LA is a far flight. There's a lot of distance there, and I'd imagine that that's an expensive flight, right? To like pay out of your own pocket just to meet some stranger who built this company that's, you know, impacted your son's life. And she did that, and I was in meetings all day, and so I pop out and come, like I see she's talking to a bunch of people. My team did a really great job at like making her feel at home and making her son feel special. And I pop out and I turn the corner and I say hello to her, and no lie, man, she immediately started crying. It was one of the most surreal experiences like of this journey. And And I was like, keep it together, you know, because I don't know how to handle that. I was like, yo, you gotta relax. And then like I go to shake her son's hand and he's just sweating, you know. Yeah. But you know, I end up spending time with them and talking to her. You know, just one, like she sent us this letter even ahead of time about like how this has affected her son. She's like, look, you know, my son was, you know, what you call an outcast. You know, he didn't have a lot of friends, didn't really have any affinity for school, hadn't ever played sports or felt like he was capable of playing sports. And, you know, I go on YouTube and I somehow scroll across this video interview that you did. And as a part of that interview, they went to this school where my son goes and they also interviewed my kid. And she's like, I saw this light being shined on my kid for these talents that he had playing this video game. Yeah. And he never even told me that he was interviewed. The school hadn't told me, which is a whole nother thing. But like, you know, I was so proud of that moment. So I shared it online. I comment on the YouTube video and I was hopeful that you guys would see it, but I understand like you can't see everything. And she's like, down the road, my son comes home one day and he's like, hey mama, like eventually he tells me I'd already known, but like, you know, I made this JV team for like esports, right, at my school, and like we're like doing well or whatever. And she's like, you don't understand how well, like how like bright my life shined, like or like how bright or happy I was in that moment because of how happy her son was. And it's such a beautiful thing, you know, because we spent all of our time in this office while still a beautiful space with even better people. We're thinking about building a company, right? Mm-hmm. And we're thinking about that through the lens of like world domination. We're like, we're going to be we're talking through market share and revenue and strategic moats and fundraising and all these things. But like we don't really, you know, like it's in those moments like we humanize the work that we do, like the impact that it has. Yeah. And so, I mean, we get thousands of those stories, and everyone's different. But like, but you know, the thing that I'm most proud of is like not only like this thing that we built, whether it be the space, the people, the product, but obviously on top of that, like the lives that we've touched through that. And I think, I think it's such a beautiful thing.
Well, y'all impacted me, man. I appreciate y'all. What, stop the social club, shop talk?
Of course, yeah.
Thanks for having us, man. Thanks for having us, man.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah.